Hello. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse right now. Okay. Just minimize some windows here. Hey, Louise. Hi, Leslie. How's everybody doing so far? And let's see. Hi, Susan. I'm seeing some new names in the chat. Kind of getting a slow start right now. We're up at my easel today because my desk is filled with a journal that I'm binding and filming for the Cricklewood studio tier. So, can everybody hear me okay? Because I'm not mic'd. If it's better for you that I'm mic'd, I can go get my mic. Let me know if the sound is okay. Anybody? Okay, Leslie can hear me okay. Hey, Renee. All right. This is going to be a short one. Thanks, Kate. This is going to be a short one in terms of, how things can stretch to like 2, 3 hours. I'm aiming for an hour. If we go a little over, that's fine too. But I thought it'd be a good thing to, because I'm in the middle of several different projects. My field journal's downstairs. I haven't processed any of the photos I took over the weekend. So I thought, let me just throw something up from Birds of the World. And unfortunately, I forgot what this one is. Anybody looking at him? I think, is it maybe a killdeer? Probably totally wrong about that. I'm still learning. So, but I thought it would be a good thing to kind of build on what I put in the note yesterday for our Tuesday drawing note. If you haven't seen that, no worries. It's just, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's a series that I'm doing on Tuesday for the next rest of this month and into August. It's about drawing. Last month and the month before, it was a big thing about the Munsell color theory. I just, oh, okay, so it's not that. Thank you, Leslie. Leslie says the killdeer have an orange ring around the eye. Okay, well, this is a mystery bird, mystery shorebird. I will, I will get the name of this bird before I publish the replay. Um, but anyway, so this time it's just some basic drawing stuff. So I thought, well, let's draw. It's good practice. For those of you who are doing camp with me, hopefully you brought your own stuff that you're working on, so you can work alongside me. But yeah, so I just thought I'd build on that. So we talked, and let me just make sure that this is at a good height. Okay, I just want to make sure you guys can see okay. Yeah, okay, awesome. So yesterday in the note, I talked about values, value, the value strip. And the thing to remember, I'm just putting a mark there. The thing to remember about any kind of drawing or painting that you're doing, if you're aiming for realism and to translate what you see onto paper, um, the value, meaning from light to dark, dark to light, and everything in between, that's going to help trick the eye into thinking it's in 3 dimensions. And so that's why value is even more important than getting the proportions right. Not that that isn't right, that isn't very important. Proportions are very, very important. However, you can be forgiven for a lot of things if your values are spot on. And that goes for whether you're just working in graphite, black and white, or whether you're working in color. And so it's good to get this but it's kind of the practice. Now, I thought I'd show you, let's see, let me do my, get rid of this. Okay, so I'm working on toned paper. So I'm going to create a 3-value scale. And let's hope that I am in frame. I am. Okay, good. So I'm going to do a 3-value scale and show you how you can use values to also do some quick sketching when you're in the field. Because sometimes we just don't, either we don't have time because we took people with us on our excursion and we need to keep moving. Sometimes it's because what we're studying out in the field doesn't realize that we are on an important mission and goes about its own business and moves. So sometimes if you can just record the values, you're good to go. So what I got here is a pretty quick and dirty value scale. Now, why did I put white down? If you're just working in your journals, I'm going to think that most of you probably are working on white or cream colored paper, in which case your paper would be here, this would be shaded in, and this would be also shaded in. In other words, you'd have this and then something light and then something darker next to it. But I'm working on a toned piece of paper, so I don't want to compress the values. So we're working white, mid-tone or half-tone. I like the term half-tone. And then as dark as we can get this. So in the case of our little friend here, hey Scott, I'm getting my reference pulled up. So in case of our little friend here, we can kind of map him out. If he's moving and doing his thing, we can go in there with a just kind of isolating those shadow shapes. Hold on, I gotta get my right pencil. Okay, so if I'm looking at him, and again, let's say I'm just doing something real quick, so I need him to be pretty small. Okay, so whatever this is, probably going to be like this. So 1.5. If I'm blocking this in real quick, even more. I'm first getting at the perimeter. Here we go. So this is his proportion, his basic proportion, that envelope that we talked about a while ago. Just that outside part of him. And then I can look really quickly and plot out some verticals here. If I'm looking from the tip of his beak to the base of his head, that's a little more than a third of him over. So that would be his head. And to the surface of the water, so that's the surface of the water. That's the bottom of his head. And his tail is just kind of right in this. And then I'm getting kind of the slope of him, his action line. There that is. And then I can start to think in terms of, okay, so that's his top. That would be the top of his head, the bottom of his head. Probably his belly and chest are starting here. I've got the end of the tail, kind of the way he occupies space is on that diagonal. Not really worrying about the feet, but I guess I better put in the bottom of the body. I'm thinking I'm just judging, kind of taking the proportion. It's about a third of the way up. So this would be 2/3, that would be a third, and that's where his body would be. Um, Maybe even a little bit wider than that. And then I can start to think about this value scale. If I'm gonna say this is also kind of where I'm seeing the light shape come in. So I'm looking, light is coming from this angle. And so this whole part of him right here is all in shadow, especially this one right here. This whole shape is in shadow. So I can just start to kind of figure out this head's like this, beak coming out. I'm just doing a real quick and dirty sketch. Got a little head. Flattens up here, comes up here, here, and here. Then I can start to use the whole idea of this scale to kind of quickly sketch my bird. The lightest part of him is going to be here. And a bit right here. So I'm looking at the shapes of where the light is coming from. This is really light. Got a bit of light here. Not so much there, but here. And not so much here. This whole back part. There's the shape that kind of comes up like this and curves around and hits the top and comes this way. This whole and I'm seeing that there's a piece here that is not dark. Kind of dark in between his legs. Not right there. And not really right there either. So I can see that there's kind of a light pattern that's working itself out where I've got the three. The lightest part of him, kind of that mid-tone, and then the darkest. And then I can go in if I have time and he's not moving. Or maybe he moved his head down, but that's okay. And I can start to kind of put in what we think of as the details. And I can check that beak. About the same. I could just kind of, nothing too detailed. And I'm just kind of going around the perimeter, checking here, here. looking at that shape and thinking, well, I can darken that up a little. And I'm not even looking at his feather markings. I'm just getting the shape of him in the darkest parts and keeping to that three value scale. So I'm grouping a lot of stuff together. I'm going to lose his eye, and that's okay. See, all this is dark because I'm just generalizing. Dark. This gets lighter as it goes in here, but it's still kind of dark. This too. It's like a feather. And something right in here. This come up. Let's slow down. Let's this way. And this is all light, light, light. Or if I were working on white paper, this would be the part that I left light, and this would be the part that is the mid-tone area. There's actually a couple, so I actually put in an extra little mid-tone in there. But if I didn't, if I just did the three, there's a bit of white. It's actually higher. Move that. So it's all about kind of grouping these values together. So I have this big dark shape that kind of comes down, takes over his beak, comes down around. There's some shadow right here that sits right next to bits of light. There's actually right in here a bit of light. And here, and here, and here, and right up to the tail. This is all part of that mid-tone shape. So you're already kind of seeing a bird shape. It's not exactly this bird, but I would be writing a lot of different notes too to try to get and refining the shapes. But that would be a very quick way of just bam, putting something down really, really fast. And you can do that with just having three values, and it gives still some kind of a volume in there. I can break up what I see here too in terms of his background. So if I want to put some context in here, I'm squinting my eyes down first of all, and I can see that there's so I'm looking, I'm ignoring color, I'm just putting down kind of these value tones and I'm breaking it into just three. So I'm grouping a lot of stuff together. So there's this dark shape that's here. There's a lighter shape right here. You've got this whole mid-tone area, which is actually kind of all looped into whatever's up here too. Because if I squint my eyes, I don't even see this white, which isn't white. It's actually kind of a gray, and it's the same value as that green that's here. But right above it, there's some dark patches. And then this whole area. And there is bits of white just right around him, right here. So value at this point has nothing to do with color. It all has to do with calibrating how the light is falling on an object. If the light's coming from this direction, which it is, and I'm trying to see, actually it's kind of coming more in this direction. So it's hitting him here, and all of this will be lit up, and all of this will be really, really dark, and all of this will be those halftones that I showed yesterday. Here's that value scale that I had in the note yesterday. Oops. Okay, come on. Except this one is 7. We're compressing all of these values into just this one, which is why I'm not going in and nuancing this at all. So again, this is because I'm explaining it, it's not that fast, but it is a very quick way to get something down. It's also a really good way to warm up. Let me catch up to see if anybody had questions. Oh, awesome. Kate Nick said it's a sanderling in the sandpiper family. I think you're absolutely right. Okay, awesome. Thank you. See how it works so well when we use our collective brains, except this time we used Kate's brain. My brain was not involved. um, let's see. Oh, thanks, Connie. It's my pleasure. And oh, no problem, Maria. I forget to add so much to my calendar of late. I don't know, I've got summer brain, people. But does this make sense? So I just kind of wanted you to see this in action. Next week's note, we're going to talk about shadows in detail, but I thought to give you some tools if you're out sketching outside and sketching things that move, sketching things that don't move. The light changes all the time, so you're always trying to capture something. But this is just kind of a quick way to do it. Use three values: the color of your paper, a mid-tone, and the darkest you can get your pencils to go. Um, because I'm using tone paper, and if you are using toned paper in your sketchbooks, your toned paper will be your mid-tone, and you're going to need some sort of white pencil. I think most of you will be using something more like this, in which case your lightest is always the color of your paper. I'm going to leave this up. Let's see where I can put this where we can see it. All right, let's do something a little bit more nuanced with our friend here. Let's see. Pull out. I'm going to sharpen my pencil. Of course, if he decided to stand still, or if I took a photograph of him, oh, cool, Connie, you're a photographer. Wildlife or everything? Portraits? What kind of photographer? Photography is so important and so fascinating. It's always amazing how much you know, you're using that contraption to capture so much, and it reveals so much just because it can freeze something in time in a nanosecond. So awesome. Um, okay, we're gonna do this guy, but we're gonna break him out a little bit more. Let me see. Am I good? Yeah. Okay, so that's the top of his head. Because I can't really go lower than this, I'm going to, yeah, he's still 1.5. So I'm going to say I don't want his beak to go beyond this. So roughly, we're looking at this. Yeah, that's it. So I roughly like to put a box. This is if you go back to Wonder-Filled Wednesdays, not Wonder-Filled Wednesdays. Well, yeah, I do this in Wonder-Filled Wednesday all the time. But if you go two of the Tuesday series, last week's, um, I always start every drawing, every image I make, even when I'm out in the field, as you saw when I did here. I'm always trying to get the general proportions, but I like to put a box or what's called the envelope. And then sometimes I do this, sometimes I do not, but in this case, he's kind of got this direction as an action line. Um, I didn't really go into detail in the Tuesday post. Those of you who have been around Cricklewood for a while, you've heard me say this. But the action line doesn't really correspond to anything in the bird other than it is how he's occupying space. Sometimes humans occupy space by standing upright, unless, we might be dancing or bending, in which case we could be occupying space like that, or we could, if we're dancing, we're occupying space like this. So the action line is just how we're occupying the space. It doesn't necessarily correspond to any part of the bird in general. As we develop, sometimes the action line, you can kind of see how it fits into the anatomy, but it's not about the anatomy. It's about how this three-dimensional subject occupies space, and it just has this direction. Okay, so I just like to sometimes put that in for my own reference. And then I'm building kind of this grid right here. Um, and let's see, if I am going from the top of his head to where his feet are in the puddle, and then to the bottom of his head, and seeing how many I can fit in. I can fit about 2 heads in. So a third of the way is where that head is. So 2, and that's a little more, so I gotta bring it up. There's 2, there's 3, yeah. So the bottom of his head is going to be there. The edge of his beak is going to be somewhere along this line. The top of his head is going to be somewhere there. I now have a vertical and 2 horizontals that I can calibrate so much of the drawing from. Let me just catch up on the chat. Connie says, I should name a single niche. No, you shouldn't. You should follow your curiosity. That's your niche. But sorry, that's probably like, I didn't ask for your advice. Um, and yet, currently mostly portraits. Awesome. Ooh, nature and mindful moments. Uh, you were a caregiver. That's awesome. And Maria says, yes. Oh, cool. You got an action shot, Maria. That's awesome. Okay, let me continue. So I'm kind of building just a grid, but not just any grid. A lot of times people will talk about the grid to transfer a drawing, and you are like really doing an equal grid. This is not that kind of grid. We're building a grid based on the subject itself, and then we're going to use those relationships to get a representation of this bird, or any. You do this with trees, do this with little forest creatures, big forest creatures, horses, people. I mean, that's how I learned how to do this kind of grid thing. I learned how to draw faces, and this is kind of how you do it. Um, okay, so I have that. And just so because now I have this unit of measurement, I'm going to make this top of his head to right under his chin. If birds had chins, I'm going to make that my unit of measurement. And I'm going to see how wide his head is compared to that unit of measurement. It's a little bit, it's like a 1 1/3. Okay, well, you know what? I better also measure his beak. Okay, yeah. So halfway here is the back. So let's see. So actually, one of these to here is supposed to be his beak. Okay. So that's the front of his face. And then 1 1/3 of this is the back of his head. It's about 1 1/2. Yeah, it's more like 1 1/3. Okay, so that's going to just be brought in a little bit. So now I've got 2 horizontals and 3 verticals that are giving me landmarks. Edge of his beak, bottom of his head, top of his head, front of his face, back of his head. No, yeah. Oh, wait, no. Front of his face. Yeah. I was measuring from here. So front of his face is going to be back here. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be kind of the back of his head, front of his face, front of his beak, bottom of his head, top of his head is going to be over here. Going to be nothing in this area. Nothing in this area either. So we're just going to take that corner out. And then I can use that unit of measurement, this one, to plot out his body. 2.5 before I get to his tail. So 2, right here, so I can move that. That's his body. And then I can use that unit of measurement to see his tail. His tail is slightly longer. It's going to be right there. That's the tail. So now I have more verticals. I've got a vertical for the front of his beak. His beak will not go farther than that. Front of his face, back of his head, basically his rump, and then his tail. And then I've got some horizontals, top of his head, bottom of his head, and I know that his feet are going to enter the water somewhere in here. So now I can go ahead and figure out some others. So let's just extend this way. Not so much this anymore. Get rid of the lines I do not need. And let's just kind of figure out so I'm eyeballing it, but his eye is somewhere kind of in the center of his head, right there, which is also roughly lining up where his nape hits the back of his head. Now that I have that point, I can get some rough angles for his back. These are just general. This line is much more nuanced. I could also use this point to figure out where the end of his tail kind of, not where the end of the tail, but where the tail where it meets his body. So if I follow it here, it meets his body there. And then I have a horizontal where the top of his tail is. Okay, so I don't need these lines anymore, right here. Okay, so I know that this is where his tail is going to end. I know this is the line of the tail. This point, I'm reasonably sure I have it where tail meets the body, where body meets the head, and we know these, uh, what these lines are the perimeter of, and this one, and this one. Okay, so I can get a reasonable angle this way. We don't know if that's right. It's just a ballpark. We're guesstimating. So it's got lots of lines. And that's okay, because one of the things about drawing is, and this is why you should never be afraid to put your first marks down, because you won't know where to put your other marks unless you have a mark to compare it against. So you make your best guess. There's no wrong, there's just your best guess. And then you move it. You move it based on comparison as you begin to build the rest of your subject, in this case, birds. So I'm actually going to use that unit of measurement here to figure out where his belly line is. It's like 1.5. Yeah, it's 1.5. So what I did was, because I don't know where it is 1.5, I went the unit of measurement. I'm sure about this point. So I went 1.5 down, that's here. And then I took from that point, the 1.5, that means that his belly is right here. I'll do that again. So this is my unit of measurement I'm basing everything on. Top of his head, right under his chin, if a bird had chins. I'm reasonably sure about that. So I measured from here to here, and then I measured from here to here, and I do need to move that line because it's 1.5, so it's right here. And then I took that unit of measurement and I dropped it down, and this gives me the line of his belly. Now I have another horizontal on my grid. I'm going to read these. This was his back, remember? I'm leaving the action line for now. Now, I don't know where along this all starts to slope, but I can use that. Okay, I'm answering questions. Let's see. Oh, good. Happy voting. Good luck. And Connie says she has to leave because she has to vote. Connie, there will be a replay available for everybody. So if you are a Cricklewood subscriber, you'll get it in your inbox. If not, just look on notes because I post when it goes public, hopefully tomorrow morning. Okay? All right, let's do some more here. So again, I'm kind of roughly eyeballing it right now. I'm thinking where his chest is on his head. That vertical line running up from the chest to the head is actually right in the middle. So if I bisect this a bit, yeah, remember that's the front of his face. His beak is somewhere in here, but I don't know yet because we don't have other things in there. But if I go down here, this is where the top, where his chest is, right there. And I'm just kind of eyeballing where that is, where it ends. But this is an angle that I'm getting right off the bird. So when I'm looking at my reference, I'm locking my elbow and I am closing my non-dominant eye. My non-dominant eye is my right one. And I am looking to see where my line of pencil meets this angle right here. And I'm transferring that to here. So of course I'm looking at my photo reference. See, okay, so that's that. So now we kind of have what's going on here. And I want to find out where this curve is. So I'm going to use my unit of measurement. I'm going to go from that front point of the chest right here. I'm going to see how many heads fit in there. 2. How many heads fit in before we get to the leg, which also corresponds with this curve that's right there. And it's 2 of them. So 1, 2, and there's a leg right there. And this will come up. Comes up right up here. So I actually don't need any of this, but I do need this line because this is just one set of feathers. I'm going to take all this out. Might as well put in some legs. And I'm going to use my unit of measurement to figure out where his other leg is. It's halfway. And I'm also checking where the knee is, right there. Actually, that's not the knee, that's the ankle. And now I have legs. Take this out because I don't need it anymore. I only remove the lines I don't need anymore. I do need this one, at least right up until there. Is this making sense so far? Some of you are looking at this going, this is old hat. You already showed us this, but for some of you, this might be new. Besides, it's always good practice. I always like to double check. And it just so happens that right below here is a horizontal grid line that gives me a little bit of those feathers under the tail. Now, I've done this in a lot of blocky lines because we're just blocking it in. So what I'm going to do now is take off some of these corners, like this one. Take off that one. Actually, this comes up a little. Corner needs to come off even more. Come up. Corner comes off. Okay. I'm going to see where that beak starts. Remember, I have a center little mark that kind of is related to the eye, but not exactly. But that center is giving me the angle where the beak is, the top of the beak. And because now I have this one, I can double check where this is coming. And I'm going to just round this out by cutting that corner off. Taking away the lines I do not need. So what's coming in here is this comes down straight. There's a tiny little angle right here that changes. I've exaggerated it a little. And it comes down like so. And here and then I just trim away what I don't need. I'm going to keep this because it's a good reference. This is the midpoint of the head. And because I already had some lines that I knew I had to move around, I had the beak too far up. But I wouldn't have known that if I didn't put my best guess in already, which was right there. Okay, so now that I know where the top of the beak is, on this angle is the eye. I'm going to take my middle piece out because the eye pretty much corresponds to that middle. It's kind of right here. Now, I do not know if that's the exact size and shape of the eye, but for now, it's good enough. I'm just going to put some where his feathers are meeting the beak. And double checking that I have that angle right, which I do not. I know I have to bring this up because this negative space is smaller than what I drew. Which I wouldn't have known if I did not have my best guess. But also put some of the shadow in. I don't really have to erase the line I did, I just need to go over it. And all this is in shadow. And this. And that. So if I were to create just one big shadow shape, grouping them all together, and I do that by squinting my eyes, be here and here, all the way up to right in here, all of this. Kind of adjusting the shape as I go on. It's a little flat there, but then this rounds towards the front. Like this. And right in here, there's a shadow shape right here. And it's roughly this shape. And then there's nothing right here, but then there's kind of a triangle shape right here. And there's some feathers right here, a little shadowy shape. So I've done some like big groupings by using kind of the lighter midtones, lighter halftones. And now I can go in and start to break down these shadow areas a little bit more. So like right here, and I'm gonna make it, give it a feathered edge because there's texture, feather texture. There's like a, he's like casting a shadow on his own body, this leg right here. Might as well put that in too. So he's like casting a shadow. And we're going to talk about cast shadows next week. Ouch. And you know what? As I'm putting the shadow in, I realize this needs to come in a little bit more. It isn't actually all one thing. Right in here. As is this. The whole thing dark. So then I can start to look at the darkest I can get. That's the darkest I can get. Let's go with this one. And so part of this is going to be markings. Little hint about bird eyes, make sure the corners match up at the right angle. Otherwise they look weird. He's got no highlight in his eyes because it's in shadow. And he's got some markings here that's going to make it look darker. In here. And just going through and putting in the darkest parts. And thinking about the shape. of those darkest parts. It's not the darkest part. But right over here. Okay, so now we kind of just have a basic, I haven't put any white in. I've basically got, here, got this and this in, and then a little bit of what's in here. So the whole thing about making something look 3D is to get this part all in the right place. And you've got darker midtones and you've got lighter midtones. You've got a dark side, which includes the darkest you can go, where no light is, and a slightly lighter version of that, which still no light gets there except what's reflected, and we will talk about that next week. So it's usually light that's bouncing off of something else, that kind of lightens up this dark area. And then you've got the light side of any subject, and you've got the lightest you can go, but then you've got all of these midtones or half tones, and it's these tones which only occur on the light side, in this case, light side of the bird, that is going to make it look 3D. So, get my darkest pencil because we're kind of running out of time. So I'm gonna kind of do something quick and dirty. So if this is the darkest side of my bird right here, and I'm not even putting markings in his feather markings yet. And this is all part of it. Dark side of the bird. Then within that, I have these two that I can use. This to make the darkest part. This is like absolutely no sun can get in here. None of this light that's coming from this direction can get to this part of my bird. But there's some reflected stuff going on in here. Again, we'll talk about that next week. Reflected light, the different shadows. But as we get towards this area, that's right here. This is kind of the turn of the bird. This is the front planes of the bird. If you think of the bird as wearing little facets, it's got a front plane here. There's another one right there. There's a plane here. You know, there are these little flat panels, and those aren't receiving any light except what might actually be reflecting, say, off of, as the light hits some water here, it's reflecting back on him up here. So what we're getting is kind of the turn of the bird right here. And this part is going to be the absolute darkest because it's facing away from the light. It's the same as what's happening here. Not to mention his beak is black. So any residual light coming in here, that beak is just sucking it in visually. So just going to do that. But this face, even though he's got markings that when we would use color for this, we would reflect that. So if I were to put his markings in, kind of on top of that, markings here too. And then you see them get lighter here, but darker here. And if you look at the lightest part of him, it's right in here. And here. All up along here. Now, he's got feather markings, and if we were working in color, this would be brighter, and these would be more muted on this side to give that look. We're just going to put in some of the parts that are catching the light. And interestingly, we've got some of the light like right under here catching some of those feathers. And that's as far as they go. And then a bit right here. And a bit right there. And where he enters the water, that's catching some of that light. And here, and here. And then just a little bit right here, because I suspect it's reflecting. And then again, this part's catching the light. Right here. It's catching some reflected light. As we move from this area, which sometimes is called core shadow, terminator, we'll talk about that next week. But as we go up from that, this edge is not so sharp because we are starting to build towards the dark, or you can go this way, towards the light. There's a patch of light right here. The important thing is to kind of get the shape of it right. And then remember there was another one right here too. So then we have to think about, well, what's happening here? So what we have is a wing. So this part bubbles out. This part rounds away. So I can kind of fill it in with halftones to show how it's kind of turning away. But then this is also, so this is darker, this is darker. But see, we're in the light, so nothing can get as dark as that. And here's that lighter mid-tone. In this case, it's this. Let's move some of this. And we've got that right here too, that lighter mid-tone right So what's happening is this right here is turning, is getting less light. And because I darkened that, I need to darken this edge. Maybe I just want to pull up some of this, but not a lot, just enough to with the markings. And looking at this, this is actually very sharp. There's a very definitive line right in here. And then it kind of comes in this way, but it becomes that mid-tone, this color. Or think of this one as more like this. And we've got the same thing happening here. It's like a shadow because these feathers aren't getting as much light. And then I can fill this in. Let's see. This is kind of the horizon right here, or that's not the horizon. Well, yes, it is. It's so hard to know. And this is getting especially darker as we get into here. This not so much, but I'm not going to be too concerned with above. And then we have that little bit of feathery shadow right in here. And all of a sudden a wing pops out. This always happens to me. Once I start putting in the shadows, I can see where maybe the form could have been a little better. But I wouldn't have known that had I not already had the lines down. Please. Just looking where the light's catching things now. So it starts to look a little bit more solid. And I can use my kneaded eraser as a drawing tool as well. And see where maybe I want to pick out a little bit of the lighter markings. So here we've got that. Pull a little bit of the graphite right there. And I'm always thinking of this value scale. Let's get into the time where I'm going to need to retire this good kneaded eraser. It's all full of graphite. So I'm squinting my eyes actually down to kind of blur everything so all I see are the light and dark shapes. And I can see that there's this light shape. Right? Right off that very bright one, kind of like a wedgy shape. Like so. And then I can take a hard pencil and just blend that all together. Same right here. Okay. It's a feather marking is what we've got right here. I just want to darken right under here a little bit. Because that's all I want to do in the darks, but I need to develop this a little better. So this is like the brightest right in here. So everything in here is going to be darker, but never as dark as what's here. It has to be darker than what's up in here. It has to be this. I figure I might as well put in some of that, the feather markings too. See, as I get into the light, it has to be lighter. This has to stay dark. This is all dark. What I can do is just put a little mist of graphite over it. And just thinking about water in terms of the way his feet are going to go into the water. It's going to cause some ripples. But that would be a legit sketchbook, hour and a half, quickie sketch in, well, I wouldn't call it quick, but quicker than say once you're back in your studio where everything is, you take hours just to come up with the framework and the block in, and then days to develop the form. Um, but this is where the value scale can help you. Um, the least amount of values, but keeping it to something logical, like your lightest, your darkest, and then whatever would sit right in the middle, or something even more elaborate where you have your lightest and your darkest, and then some of these, you expand your half tones. And this is a 7-step scale. You could do a 4-step scale where you break this mid-tone into 2 shades, or a 5-step scale where this mid-tone is broken into 3 shades, because that's exactly what happened here. This 2-step scale, this halftone was broken up into 5 halftones, calibrated between the darkest and the lightest. So you could break this out in any way that seems logical, as long as the steps are broken more or less evenly, and then translating that to whatever you're drawing. Does that make sense? For some of you, we've been practicing this for the better part of a year and a half. For those of you who are new to this, ask questions. Definitely look for, what happened here? Definitely look for the replay video if you want to see this again. Also, look at the past Wonder-Filled Wednesdays. There are a couple recent ones where we really uh, dialed into the drawing. And there's a Fieldwork Friday episode where we talked about planar drawing, which is more about, like I was telling you, these little facets. But value, so important. And if you can draw getting your values in the right place and really use it to make something look 3-dimensional and something look like it it occupies space. Um, I'm actually going to put, if the sun is coming this way, he's actually creating a shadow right here. So I'm just going to put that in, just kind of a general shadow. So he looks more solid. So values, that value scale, shadows on your subject and around your subject, shadows cast by your subject, which we will talk about next Tuesday, during the Tuesday note. This all helps create realism and creates a subject that occupies space in 3 dimensions. So I hope this was somewhat helpful. Go ahead and add a little bit more detail. Flesh out his legs here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Oh, I should move this up. Take a screenshot of this, although, um, like I said, look for that Tuesday note. I will put a link to the Tuesday note in the replay post that goes out tomorrow, so you can always look at that because this really did complement that. Yeah, and so this is independent of his markings. I mean, I tried to pay attention to that, but I wasn't really concerned. I was more concerned with his shape and then creating a more three-dimensional version of him. If he had more time, then we can do more about that. But we'll talk about markings and how to incorporate texture when you're doing this. But if you're new to drawing, it's really good to understand values and how you can use it to kind of trick the eye into thinking you've got something much more solid. All right, that's pretty much all I have for today. Let's see, next week I'll be back for another Wonder-Filled Wednesday, and I hope you will join me for that. Coming up at the end of the week, we have a Fieldwork Friday. Um, but I'll put something in our chat for those of you who are in Fieldwork Friday, because it's more of a like a let's get together nature journal type of thing. And I know Friday afternoons have not been the best for everybody. So maybe we'll have a special session, if not over the weekend, maybe during the evening. I'll put something in the chat tonight, the Fieldwork Friday chat, and then we can talk amongst ourselves and see what we want to do for Fieldwork Friday. If you're in the Cricklewood studio tier, I've got another post going out probably late tomorrow, uh, or Friday morning, because I still have a few more videos to film for you guys. But we're binding our nature journals, and I'm going to show you how to sew them up. And I've got some supplemental videos in there, just kind of troubleshooting what I think may happen as you're binding and how to solve that. Um, yeah. And for the rest of you, I hope that you're joining us for Cricklewood Camp and that you're getting out there and hopefully figured out your theme for the next month or two and are getting out there and sketching and making notes and doing all that fun stuff. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I if you go to the Cricklewood homepage, you'll see an orientation post about you're an artist in residence, and that's all about our project. But I will link to that in the Wonderfilled Wednesday too. Yeah, so let me see. Oh, so Leslie says she finished her Killdeer and Baby. Ooh. Ooh. Did you put that in the camp? I haven't. I have to get caught up in the camp chat. So that's the other thing. Everybody's welcome to post in the camp chat. I hope you do. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there was something else I had to tell you. That's it for now, really. Next week, Wonder-Filled Wednesday, it's every week, and some of the housekeeping with the other tiers. But yes, if you are not yet a subscriber to Cricklewood Nature Journal, I have different tiers from free to like heavy project tiers. Check it out, see if something fits with you. If not, just follow me on Notes. I put a lot of stuff on Notes, including that Tuesday drawing series. Um, yeah, but if you want any of this in your email box, go ahead and become a free subscriber. And if you want more in-depth or projects, nature-related illustration, painting, drawing projects, check out the other tiers and see if anything strikes your fancy. All right, I'll let everybody go so that you can go outside and draw. All right, thank you so much for spending this afternoon with me. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with everybody very, very soon. Bye.